Call to order.
Now we call to order.
All right, first thing is determine a quorum, and we have one, so we're ready to go. We need to approve the minutes of the August 19th, 2010 meeting, which was 1 year ago.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So ordered. Next item is to nominate and elect a chairman for a 1-year term. Nominations are now in order.
I nominate you.
Thank you.
You're good, Mr. Connor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If not, I move nominations be closed and I be elected chairman.
Sounds good to me.
We need a vote. We need a
Oh,
Need a vote.
that's right. It has to be a vote. It can't be
We have to
unanimous.
vote.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Is that okay?
yes, sir.
Keep me straight. Now we need a vice chairman for a 1-year term. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Deborah Edwards.
Okay. Is there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
I make a motion that nominations cease and we elect Deborah.
All right, motion. A second? Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Now ordered. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very surprised.
Now we get into the meat of this meeting. And I think when the agenda is this heavy, it would be wise to send this stuff out a little bit earlier, like maybe a week instead of just a couple days. Because this is
Sorry,
pretty,
I'm still working on getting everything finalized.
yeah. But it's still, when it's this heavy and there's so much to look at and so many questions to be asked, it seems like the earlier we can get it out, the better off we are. And I think we should introduce the two people here, because we have name tags and you don't.
I'm Katie Klein. I'm the project engineer with the Stormwater Department.
Okay?
And I'm Kyle Brown, I'm the city engineer.
All right. All right. We got new business now. Oop, I'm looking at the minutes. I'll read that. Revision of Title 14, Chapter 3, Grading, Soil Erosion, and Sedimentation Control in 6 Stormwater Management and Municipal Code. 2 chapters of the Municipal Code in conflicting language has now been corrected. Updated 14307 general criteria, so the city's requirements match that of the state of Tennessee. General LPDES permit for discharge of stormwater associated with construction activities. Added requirements needed for land disturbance permit to both chapters. All right, the first one. Recommend to the board, the mayor and aldermen amend Title 14, Chapter 3 of the Vergne Municipal Code regarding grading, soil erosion, and sedimentation control. The new language in your packet is clear, the language has been deleted, has drawn lines through it. So you understand what we're cutting out and what we're adding. So are there any questions?
I have a lot of questions.
Chairman, can I explain a little bit about why we're doing this? Basically, we were issued a new MS4 permit, which is municipal separate storm sewer system. And this is a requirement of that permit, the city's permit, that our regulations meet that of the state's construction permit. So basically, any changes that have been made are just to bring it into compliance with the state permit. And nothing really is added. I mean, there are changes to our regs, but there's nothing in here that would not already be a requirement of anybody doing any construction within the city, because it would already be a requirement of the state of Tennessee.
Okay. You had a question?
I have a lot of questions, and it could tie into that I just need education. So is it okay if I ask questions?
Of course.
Okay. 20. There aren't page numbers. So Stormwater Appeals and Advisory Board. Who is that?
That is you.
That's
It's us.
Right.
Okay. I didn't realize we were the appeals.
Oh, yeah, that's all.
Okay. Well, that's embarrassing.
That's okay.
Throughout the document, there are references to expectations and direction given and actions throughout the duration. You know, I see there's 2 levels with some and 3 levels with others. How is that policed? Is that Kyle? Is that you? Do we trust the contractor?
We have regular inspections of all construction sites within the Laverne city limits. All construction sites are inspected at least once a month. So any violations that are found during those inspections are what would be referring to, or complaints that we get from other citizens that could be a violation.
And to elaborate on that more, basically, we do have a city, a stormwater inspector that goes out and does these inspections. And then if he has trouble or if he has something that needs correcting, that's kind of what you're saying on the inspection reports, he will notify the contractor, developer, just depends on, it may even be just a home builder, whoever it is, they'll be notified that they need to make the corrections. If they don't, there's steps in here of what we do at that point. There's letters. Most of the time, though, the inspector tries to keep it at his level and not go any higher and try to work out with the developer or builder, whoever it is, to get the items corrected. Most times we have that, it works out and we don't have any more issues. Step above that, even though it's just not really written in here, this is more just procedural policy that's in the department. Katie's the next step. They would go to her. She would then send out more of a formal letter if they're not working with them properly, and then even beyond that, I can get involved and send out another letter, or we can fine if we want to. That's some stuff that's in here, and then if the developer disagrees with us or something like that, they can appeal to this board. That's one thing this board can do. But that is the steps that we have taken. Usually, though, we don't get to fining. We more along the lines, if we have a problem, and that's kind of where Katie's saying that we're following what's the state is got in place too. If we have a problem, the state has a problem usually. So not only are we out there asking them to fix these items, the state is too. So we usually don't have to go much further than that, because the developers and builders know that not only can we find them, the state can too, and they don't want to get into all those extra costs, so they go ahead and make the improvements that are needed and required.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Have there been any problems on the widening of Vergne Road?
Walden Road.
Walden Road, yeah.
Basically, on that's more of a state-managed project, and we don't send our inspector out there. He is out there if he sees something that he really needs done. He'll work with them on that. However, the state has inspectors that are inspecting that, and then not only that, I think the EPA's even been out there on a job at that scale, because that's something that goes beyond. It is our right of way. It is going to be our road. It is a city road. However, with it being a state-managed project. They do have state inspectors out there that are out there every day too. And if you have too many inspectors trying to tell everybody what to do with the same stuff, they may have some slight differing of opinions. So we usually go with what the state's doing. However, if we see something that we don't like, our inspector will notify the state inspector that could we please address this issue. So that's kind of how the road project
And also
works.
just to add, whereas the city has the MS4 permit, TDOT has that same permit that gives them jurisdiction on their construction sites.
So, thank you very much, because between the two of you, because I really did read it as fast as I could. I did make it through, but it was really fast. So the things you're saying sound familiar. One of the things I really picked up was in the text, it appears to say that we really try to handle things verbally, which is what I think you all are confirming. And it moving up to even because I thought about you, Kyle, up to your level if it gets more serious. So over and over again in the meetings, I hear that when our ordinances don't clearly specify steps, that the city attorney is saying, no, clean it up. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. And I believe I recognize that we feel strongly that since the state mirrors us and the state is a bigger gorilla in the room, that if a problem were to occur, that the state would handle it. But have we, I respectfully submit, have we had the city attorney look at stuff for consistency to make sure that we have our steps properly codified so we don't have to face some squirrely lawsuit that even if we would prevail, we would waste our city's money defending ourselves?
The city attorney has not looked at this. Pretty much all of this is just, a lot of it's just erosion control regulations, and they're not anywhere in our municipal code. I will say though that our current stormwater ordinance was pretty much written by MTAS. There are some minor changes that have been made. So any legalities, I'm sure MTAS would have definitely made sure were in order before they sent it to all of the cities for them to use.
I
What
guess
you're
the
looking at
concern
tonight-
came from when Kyle said, well, we have this thing internal to the department that we do. That's when the red flag went up for me.
And also some of the other stuff that we're fixing is, I think when that stormwater ordinance was put in place, they just wrote a whole separate ordinance, and they never actually revised this chapter 3
Yes.
and
What,
brought it up to date.
what-
And that's really what we're trying to do now, is bring chapter 3 up to date.
That's what Katie's trying to do on chapter 3, and to clarify some things. This is a recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, so it will go to them. And when it goes to them, Evan, the city attorney, will review this. He might make some slight changes or something like that, but just as soon as we get your recommendation one way or the other, because y'all may want some changes, you may not, you may think this is okay. I will say that a lot of the stuff that's in here, Katie has taken from section 6 or chapter 6 that he has seen in the past, or that's what she's saying. Somebody has reviewed this in the past. She's not really added a whole lot of language to this that would make a lot of changes that he would probably need to review over. However, he will see this before the mayor and aldermen vote on this, and then that question will be asked, because you may say tonight that you'll want to approve it or send a favorable recommendation. However, you would like to see something added. You probably won't do that, but that, I'm just saying there is a possibility of that, and just want to throw that out there that is a possibility.
Cool. The next one is on sinkholes. Obtaining from the tenant, I don't know. There aren't page numbers we can share. I am in, hold on, I got it back up. 14304. 1, 2, 7. And it's just, it refers to applicants shall obtain from the Tennessee Department of Environment. So I'm presuming that bumps us out to the state.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just want to be sure I'm tracking it right. There's the next page under 5. There's performance bonds, and there's been a lot of talk on the Planning Commission about bonds, and I don't know whether this is the same type of bond, but if so, will it be treated according to the new process that we've been trying, that the Planning Commission Board has been working upon.
Here's what's gonna have to happen. I mean,
I will
I
say
don't get
right
too
now,
far.
this was completely copied out of chapter 6 and what was existing. It replaced even older language than that.
and
It
I,
could still be updated later when that is approved.
I don't wanna get, this board too far ahead of ourselves as far as trying to, let's say TDEC's got rules that have like year 1, you need to have this many rules in place, year 2, this many, year 3, this many. I don't want to go all the way to year 3. So there's going to be changes over the next couple of years. We may have to have more meetings, special meetings, stuff like that, to where you can make more recommendations to the mayor alderman. What Katie's trying to do tonight is chapter 3 needs to be cleaned up. That's what she's cleaning up. That performance bond section that you're looking at is the exact wording that's in there now. However, the changes that we're making in the planning commission is a totally separate stance than what we're looking at in the planning commission. We're looking at the planning commission is as far as final plat, procedure, preliminary plat, stuff like that, the actual subdivision. This is more of a performance bond, for other reasons, for land development, things like that. Now, the city attorney, any performance bond that the staff would approve or anything like that, he would review. However, what we're probably going to do is make sure we get what's at the planning commission level done first. And if that all works out and looks good, then we'll probably come back next year and change, and it may even be sooner, but then we'll make changes to this. What we don't need to do is make changes to this, make different changes to the planning commission, and nothing coincide with each other. And since we're not totally finished with the planning commission yet, we need to leave the same language in that we currently have, as opposed to continuing to make change. Let's make a small change here, then make a huge change at planning commission, then make another small. That's going to get way out of hand. So we've tried to. What Katie's done is tried to clean up chapter 3. It was out of date. And what she's basically saying is, whenever they come up with a stormwater ordinance, which is chapter 6, there's a lot of requirements they put in there. It didn't totally match language-wise, definition-wise, restriction-wise with chapter 3. She's trying to bring chapter 3 up and get it to coincide and flow well with chapter 6. That way there's not many differences there.
Yes.
And if it's feeling as though I am throwing barbs, that's not my goal. So to try to make sure that I'm following this properly, what struck me about the performance bond was all the problems I've heard about at the planning commission meetings. So what struck me was we would like consistency so that we don't have a possible similar problem area with our stormwater. So if I'm tracking you right, Kyle, and I really appreciate all the energy you're trying to explain, that really over the long term we do want the same sort of bond language herein, but we don't want to do it yet because the planning commission is the starting point. So the good news and the bad news is the same, which is what I say to my son all the time. The focus is proper, but now's not the time. So, I mean,
Right.
to be quite frank, because I really have only had exposure through the planning commission, I had not realized until I read this today that we have bonds potentially floating around in lots of different places. And so the focus for somebody, and I don't know if this falls on Bruce or whom, if I'm sitting in the room, I'll certainly bring it up, but I don't go to all the meetings, that we want to be sure that over the long run, we clean up bond language in the long run. We clean up bond language everywhere so that we don't have problems getting this money off these bonds that we've been having in the planning commission.
Right, we don't have any bonds for any type of development at this point in time with for stormwater or for any of this land development stuff. It's all bonds that we have, that we know of, are on the planning commission level with the subdivisions. And like I was saying, this is language that came probably from MTAS. That's probably where it come from. And it stated performance bond. We didn't want to touch it. We didn't want to change it. We didn't want to get it too confusing. We didn't want to make it to where just as soon as we change planning commission, if we was to try to follow it right now and then the planning commission make a few changes, then this wouldn't match it. And then, we could have made some great changes to the planning commission. We just need to leave this as it is right now and then visit it again either at next year's meeting. And that's where I was getting at too. We may have to have more meetings next year. We may just have to have, the normal one, but we can always as Bruce will let you know, we can always call a special meeting if we need to. We just need to, we'll have to pick a date, he'll have to advertise it, and then we'll have to, advertise what it's about, and then we can come back and revisit this if we deem necessary.
So down at the bottom of this in B, within 5, I have another concern. Again, I'm not trying to throw barbs, but it says that that last sentence, provision for partial prorated release of performance security or performance bond based on the completion of various developmental stages can be made at the discretion of the city engineer. Meeting after meeting that I've been in, I have perceived our city attorney to be saying, no, we can't have discretionary, because then we're opening ourselves for a lawsuit that we have to defend whether we could win or not. And please understand, sorry, that I hear what you're saying. We want to get this through and then go in and do that other cleanup language. And I just want to be sure that we're recognizing the sorts of stuff that time and time again in other meetings, as you well know, the attorney's saying, no, we really got to clean that up, because if we get sued, we'll have to defend. And we could win, but we're going to waste money that our city needs to function. So I imagine you're going to tell me that we want to wait, and I respect that. But I'm more concerned about that than the bond, to be honest. And this is what you get for having a technician on a committee. The next page, and it's the same sort of concept. 14306, third paragraph down, second full sentence, closer to the right margin. Failure to comply within the time specified shall subject permittee to revocation of the permit. Time specified felt gray. But then I presume that varies based on the type of project, so it really isn't as gray as it felt when I read it?
It's not gray. I mean, there's you would have to read, the whole ordinance or section of the municipal code, chapter 3, kind of falls in line with, it's basically saying you got to have a land disturbance permit and stuff like that. Okay, there is a time frame for land disturbance permits. There's if it's not started with 180 days, I believe it is, then it's null and void. And then if you're not completed with it, or substantial completion by a certain time frame, I think it's 18 months.
18 months.
Then there's that. Okay, that's your time frames here.
Okay. So it's not that great. It's
So
within
it's not
6
great.
months and a year and a half, because that is further back in the text.
And then basically they'll have to get an extension on a grading permit, or come in and apply for another one, or they will work with the city engineer, which is myself, or Katie, or that's what we do every day, is we work with these developers to make sure, for one, that they're grading. And what we're changing it to, as you've noticed, is going to be land disturbance permit. And the reason why grading is such a different term, that everybody's moving towards using land disturbance as opposed to grading, and that's what we're trying to clean up.
Down under 14309, I see that we've removed the text, the City Board of Mayor and Aldermen at its discretion may set fees for obtaining a grading permit, land use permit. If a permit fee schedule is established, it shall be done by resolution. I realize that your all's familiarity is much greater, and it may be that MS4 requires us to have the window of $50 to $5,000, which is what I believe I read today. But if that is a minimum, which oftentimes laws are the minimum allowable, would we not want to continue to allow our board to set those rates? Because most of the time it appears as though we'll be dealing with building contractors, and those monies, those costs tend to be rolled through to end-use people. And it may be that the city and all the folk would decide that $50 is too low of a minimum.
Bruce can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really think you have to have that statement in the ordinance to make that change. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen at any time can make a change to the ordinance and change the fee, whether that clause is in here or not, because that's with any ordinance, and that's with any rates or anything like that. If they feel like they're subject to change, they can change the rate. They don't have to have a little paragraph that says the Board of Mayor and Aldermen may set those rates.
Cool.
Yeah, that's been eliminated.
Yep, they took it out. On the next page, the sentence just seems so short, but I think it's because the point is clear. Vegetated buffer strips may not be used alone. So really, it wasn't that anything isn't there. That really is the statement, correct?
Well, previously, it said that buffer strips were an acceptable use.
I know.
And it clearly states in the construction general permit that they are not. So that was something that just pretty much needed to come out.
Okay. No, it's a great sentence. It's clear. It's to the point. I think I'm almost done. We hit the part about the Tennessee Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook a couple pages later. One, two, three pages out, the next 3 pages. The top of the page, it's bolded text, Tennessee Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook. See that a few times. And then...
That is a handbook that is put out by TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environmental Conservation, with their standards on erosion control. It is accessible on the website, on their website, and it basically has all of the standards and how things are supposed to be installed, all of your best management practices, what's allowable and what can and how to install it.
So 3 down in 11, where it talks about design, inspection, and maintenance of best management practices as described in the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. That would be a part of this handbook.
The Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan is site-specific. It is something that the developer submits to us and TDEC in order to get their permit.
Okay.
And in that plan, it outlines all of their best management practices that they're going to have on that site to control erosion and sediment control, to stop any sediment from getting off-site onto the roads. So that is a plan developed typically by the developer's engineer.
So when I hit this part of it, I thought that it might be nice for us to have a discussion about whether anybody else on the board would like to have a class. I'm more than willing to go online and print this thing. You may scare me by telling me how long it is, but I really do want to learn about this at a higher level. I want to be able to talk to the people I know in the city about parts that may make sense for us as homeowners, even though there may not be that much. I mean, if I sit on a committee, I want to be a worker bee. So is that a starting point? And does it make sense for us to talk about whether we want some sort of guided educational through it as a starting point? Or do you just want to assign me to do the grunt work and bring people notes? Which is acceptable?
I will say that the state is currently in the process of redoing this handbook, which is why you might notice that it says the most current edition of, that their new books should be being released within the next couple months because they are starting new level 1 classes coming up. Those classes are geared more towards your contractors and your engineers that are out there on site.
But what about you?
I am certified.
I mean, is it fair? I mean, if anybody else on the board is interested, is it fair to ask Katie to teach us?
Teach us, or there may be some impasse classes that we may need to look up to see if there's some for appeals boards.
So we can look for classes, but as far as being able to send you to this class, I don't know if we can. If we can, then we will let you know that you could attend this class. As far as cost of that, we'd have to probably ask the board to bear the cost or something, because if you're sitting on this board and if you're doing it for that purpose, that's something we can discuss with the mayor, alderman. Like the mayor just stated.
This particular class is $150 per person.
That's a lot of money. I mean, with Casey, I'm not sure what's acceptable to ask. So I may say something that's totally unacceptable, but people who've seen me in meetings know I do that. Is it acceptable to ask Katie if she could come up with something to show us the stuff that she thinks we need to know as a baseline? And I mean, it's not like you have to do it tomorrow, but is your schedule such that at some point in the next 6 months or a year that you could come up with something, and if we don't have a meeting between here and there, maybe that's what we do at our next meeting.
I can try to work up something.
I don't know, I don't have the right to do that. I mean, chair
Oh, we're not-
controls.
That's okay, you can ask.
I can try and do a crash course.
And she's
And that
committed.
might be, since we do have some newer members on here as well. And look at, I know, gosh, right after the board was first started, we had some type of book, Kyle, I believe that was even before you came. There was some type of little book.
Todd Spangler basically printed off, all he did was take a book, you know, on the planning commission, we've got the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations that we try to get to each member. Now, on this board, there's not really a lot of packet of information. Now, whenever and I think Mr. Skinner might have that book to the side there.
Yeah.
What he tried to do was he took these sections in the municipal code that just dealt with stormwater, then he put the stream buffer section in there, and then the different sections, and give those out to the board members. And there's not really an official book, and since y'all, you know, we don't vote on a lot of the stuff a lot of the times, that information, you know, we hadn't done another book, we could easily do another book, we could, you know, get that information
I
out.
might have mine back there, and I'll let you look over
We could
it,
easily
and I will
put-
be happy myself to print some of those off, let you, okay it, of course, if that will help to have some information.
Leave mine too.
I've got a
I'll come
copy of the
pick it
book
up.
he sent
Okay.
out,
Oh, okay.
but what I'd like to do is before we do that, is probably make sure that it's more to date, because the one he
Yes.
passed out, we've made changes to.
Yes.
I don't want you, I don't want a lot of people to get confused. I'd rather have it in a format where Katie can look over it. We can get the binders out to each board member,
And also
and
we
we
can
can
go
probably,
over some of the new permit requirements
That,
too.
yeah,
and we could probably add more information to it, and she could probably put a sheet in there that gives you websites and web addresses that you can go to review through some of these, like the handbook and stuff like that, you know, and talk about classes more in the future too.
and I'm just saying, I'll be happy to help y'all, because I know you, right now, y'all short-handed, but if you come up with something, want something printed, just let me know, and I'll be happy to consolidate it, put it together. Once you okay something, I'll help out wherever I can.
And Deborah, if you want to look through that handbook without printing it off, I do have at least one copy, if not two, in my office, so you can stop by and look at those anytime.
Oh, that would be great. Am I allowed to take it home and read it?
You can.
Oh, that would be great, because when the binders are ready, I'll pick it up so that the city doesn't have to pay to ship it. I mean, it's not that hard to come by and pick stuff up. I know it's not a lot of money, but it adds up. So I could do that. Is it fair, Katie, when the new booklet is announced, if you think of it, you know, I'll do a reminder to send you an email every couple months to ask you if the new one's available?
I know there are supposed to be classes starting, the next level 1 class in Nashville is in October, and that is supposed to be with the new book.
Oh, okay, so in October, I'll send you an email and ask if the new book's ready. Okay. Because, I mean, you know, the more exposure, the better, the more memories will grow for me.
And the current handbook, I believe, was written in 2002.
Wow.
So it is definitely in need of being updated.
On the next page, numbers on C, under C, 14, 15C, with the department's written concurrence. I guess that's a letter that comes from you, Katie?
Uh,
15 said.
yeah, I'm reading what it is above it, so that I know what it's talking about. Yes.
Cool.
It would come from either me or Kyle.
And one thing you got to keep in mind on things like this, and that's kind of why the wording's in here, it matches the state. If the state says no to some of these, it doesn't even matter what we say. You know, the state's going to govern, because the state's going to come in and they can say, well, the city told me I could do it, but the state says, well, I didn't tell you you could do it, and they're on their permit and they can fine them. So you've got like kind of a double coverage on some of this stuff, but a lot of stuff you don't. So.
And I will say I took most of this language almost directly out of the state's permit just to make sure our regs, our ordinances match what their requirements were.
Sure, and you know, the thing that this sort of theme wraps back to for me is hearing over and over again in the meetings that we need our our language to be as clear as possible so that we don't have a lawsuit. I mean, I really picked that up from listening to the attorneys in here talking about how important that is to protect the city from a squirrely lawsuit. Because, I mean, a lawsuit comes, doesn't matter how dumb it is, we have to defend ourselves. And it's a waste of money. Now, this is going to be probably the stupidest question I've asked on the next page. It says, 2-year, 24-hour storm as a minimum. And then down below, 5-year, 24-hour storm as a minimum.
That's an engineering design storm.
Oh, there you go.
It's basically, it's an engineering standard basically that they designed towards a, remember when the flood, there was the 100-year flood, there's 50-year floods. It's the same kind of 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 100-year storm.
This is talking about the size of a pipe, isn't it?
No, this
No.
is talking about like, basically in 100 years, or, you know, like a 2-year storm, every 2 years, you're gonna have a storm of that nature. So you
Okay.
need to design for that, you know, like a
Got it.
5-year storm is that. A 100-year storm is basically what it just basically says, that, you know, you should expect once in 100 years that you're gonna have a storm of that magnitude. However, you could have 5 or 6 or 7 100-year storms in a 5-year period. That it's just what she's trying to say is, engineering method wise, that is kind of what the standards are, and it's just it is a standard, and that gives you values, it gives you chart, it gives you numbers, it gives you design guide, you know, it gives you how to design stuff is what it does, but it's not a pipe size.
And this came directly out of the state language.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and so this is the sort of stuff that a class would help. I wouldn't ask stupid stuff like that. The next page, and this actually, I think it's 21 is 13, but maybe not. No, maybe it's 20, but maybe not. I might have my pages out of order, because I've got 19 and then 21, but I dropped my stack and I didn't have page numbers, so I did the rest of it. Okay, I think I'm wrapping back to other questions that I already asked about the board. Oh, appeals. And I recognize you got this directly out of their language. 14.310, the next page. It says that any person aggravated by a final decision of the board, and it appears as though it would just be us, may go to court. And I recognize we're following what came from wherever, but does it make more sense to throw it into BOZA for review for a potential variance?
No, you would be kind of like the BOZA board.
Okay, and then
That would be what
sending it
you are,
to
kinda.
full board wouldn't make sense to stop
no,
a
you-
potential
you-
lawsuit?
You are the appeals board here.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
so
they have-
sending it to the full board, though, doesn't make sense at all, because we have that power.
That's what the appeals boards are. Whether it's the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Stormwater Appeals, that's your appellate for the city.
Okay,
When that board makes a decision, if we vote to uphold, they made a decision, we vote to uphold their decision, the client's next step is only court.
okay.
That's it. That's just, yeah, that's why we have the appellate boards here.
Because I'm so used to BOZA going to the full board and the planning commission going to the full board.
No, the
So-
BOZA does not
BOZA
go
does
to
not
the
go to
Oh,
the
full board.
BOZA doesn't go to the full board?
Their
Oh,
next step
okay.
is also court.
Okay.
And then the planning commission, depending on what they're voting on, does not go to the full board. Because if they're voting on a site plan or something like that does not go
No,
to the
that's
full.
true, they don't.
So,
You're right.
what you're talking about though will go to the full board tonight, the recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Alderman. That's what the planning commission does too. When they make a recommendation to the mayor and alderman, it does go to the full board members that you're talking about. But in the cases that we're gonna be talking about is if somebody is aggrieved by something, they want to appeal, the only people they can appeal to is this board here. You make a decision. If you agree with us, then like the mayor said, their only next step is court. And y'all may change the ruling to make them happy. And if you do that, then they're not going to need to go no further. They're going to be happy with the ruling that they got. So,
And if somebody is deciding to go to court, it would be because we've agreed with yours and Katie's decision to shut down their construction site because we feel they're not doing rational stormwater work.
Well, it could be a civil penalty that was issued or anything, basically, any decision that's made that they could appeal.
Okay. But we would only levy, you would only levy a penalty if we felt they were breaching
Yes,
what
They were-
was agreed to by you when they originally started the work.
yes.
Okay, good, I'm learning. I think I'm done.
I'm going to say you finished with that first
Yes,
one.
thank you.
Okay,
Very,
then-
very much.
Any other questions? Okay, then we need a recommendation of Board Mayor Alderman, amending Title 14, Chapter 3 of Vergne Municipal Code regarding grading, soil erosion, and sedimentation control. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to send it to the board and with a favorable recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered. The next one is recommendation of Board Mayor Alderman to amend Title 14, Chapter 6 of the Vergne Municipal Code regarding stormwater management.
I thought these were the same. They were just in different order. Is that right or no?
There is, a lot of the language in
the
chapter
same.
3 was pulled out of chapter 6 to make the two
Right.
chapters mesh, so that they have the same language and they're not conflicting.
That's what we was discussing earlier. Whenever the stormwater ordinance was put together, they made a chapter 6, and it didn't really coincide with chapter 3, so we're cleaning up chapter 3, and that's why you're seeing the same thing.
The only real change that we're making in chapter 6, and let me get to that big paragraph, was the requirement of, this is something we typically require anyway, is they submit a copy of the notice of coverage from TDEC to our department before we issue them a grading permit or land disturbance permit. And also, TDEC in their construction permit is requiring that they phase construction projects more to limit site disturbance, so that the project is more phased and you have less ground being torn up at one time. So they are requiring extra plan sheets to show the phases on their erosion control plan. So since they're requiring that, now so are we.
And that's where I saw the 2 and 3 stages. Oh, thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? I need a motion to recommend the Board Mayor and Alderman amend Title 14, Chapter 6 of the Vergne Municipal Code regarding stormwater management. Is there a motion?
You have the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that we recommend to the Board of Mayor and Alderman to amend Title 14, Chapter 6 of the Vergne Municipal Code regarding stormwater management. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So ordered. And finally, the recommendation of Board and Alderman to adopt a stormwater enforcement response plan.
Okay, this plan is also a requirement of our permit that we have an enforcement response plan in place. What this plan basically does is it takes the language out of the ordinance where we can issue a civil penalty of $50 to $5,000 per day of offense, and gives the staff a guideline of how that is to be administered. And, okay, so it's a little bit less, we're picking on someone. If we're following these guidelines, the fines or civil penalties should be consistent. But this is already in the ordinance to be able to issue these penalties.
These are just adding the amounts.
It's just adding the guideline, basically. It starts at the end.
It's kind of like a policy and procedure that the board will be adopting, and like Ms. Edwards stating earlier, you don't want to treat anybody differently. You know, the attorneys have stated numerous times, it needs to be exactly in writing or something like that. And that's what Katie's basically saying is that it's now required that we have something like this in place, and so that's what we're doing. And Evan will review this before the board makes their final decision on it. However, we need a recommendation from this board, and you may see something in here that needed changing too or something.
And Katie and I discussed this today, and we're going through it with our property maintenance when we're trying to tighten those ordinances to give our codes more teeth. My question with this, which I love, we've laid this out, but the one thing that, and this will probably be a Board of once it gets to the board may have to make that decision. But we need, in my opinion, to specify when we have these type of fines, where those fines are going, who's gonna be the collecting point of those. That's been our problem in codes. We've been the court may issue fines, but there's never been any direction as to who is in collection of those fines. And I just know we're trying to clean that up in our property maintenance. So this is wonderful, and I think we discussed today that we've not determined who that shall be, and I do think we really need to think, and that may be needs to be toward the mayor and alderman once we get to that point with the attorney making that clarification.
Yes, I think that's something that definitely can be added to
Yeah.
this, and like you're stating, we definitely would like to get Evan's opinion along
Absolutely.
with probably the city administrator involved to make
Yes.
sure that whatever staff member is chosen to do that, they have the adequate time to do that. We don't want to put too much on one person that is
Exactly.
already collecting fees or something else, but we can figure something out of where that goes.
And just to throw this out, this may be something we could think about when we're doing our property maintenance, since this is all kind of in one building. We might want to consider while we're doing that, just something to look at, because like you said, we don't want one person being bombarded, but we might like to think about if we want all of that dealing with property in any way in one place that can kind of keep up with that when things go to court. I'm just saying that's something we can think about, and if I don't say it now, I might forget it later on.
It's definitely
So-
what we need to do, and the other person we need to talk to is finance director, because, let's say if we chose one of the ladies that's up front, that's at our building, more than likely it wouldn't be the permit technician, but it would be the administrative assistant that's up front. If we chose her to collect fines for both the, municipal or property maintenance code and this, that would be something, but see, she would have to know from finance director what fund it goes into, how to collect it. That way the auditors, when they're reviewing and stuff like that.
Oh.
So, I mean, we've got quite a bit on the collection aspect of it to make sure we get nailed down of where things go.
I heard. And this
But-
looks really good. Like I said, I just had to bring that out because while I'm thinking about it. So,
Well, Mayor, this actually applies to lots of different facets of our city. So this is another thing, kind of with the bonds, where we want consistency across
and he is, yes.
all the different, so this is consistency with making sure we have a way to actually bring in the money for the
Where it
fines.
goes.
Sure.
Exactly.
I do have a question. In the first paragraph, third sentence, the provisions of this enforcement response plan are not mandatory. And because it wasn't until Brother said this that it triggered for me. In here, I've seen a minimum of 50, a maximum of 5,000 per day. But in here, our example shows 500. I wonder if we want to be sure that in this is the only thing somebody walks around holding, that they can't claim that there wasn't clarity if they don't have this. To just put an asterisk that says, that this is just an example, and then
Well,
it's
I mean-
50 to 5,000, or am I missing it?
Just by the fact that it says that it's an example, but the table on table B, where it goes through how the point system actually works and gives you the tables,
Oh, you're right.
It does go up to 5,000.
You're right, I apologize. I didn't go far enough back, I apologize.
That's
So-
just an example of how to work those formulas.
Fair. So provisions not being mandatory, is that, but you said Evan will be looking at this, right? Or
Yes,
some
Evan
city attorney?
will be
Okay.
looking at this, but it's kind of, you need something that's pretty definite, but you can't just lock yourself into just no way, because there's all kind of circumstances that may happen, and it may be some uncontrollable event, and then you're gonna sit here and find somebody $5,000, it's just a home, there's got to be something that you've got a little bit of leeway to.
I agree.
And that's just board too, but that's something that Evan will review, and if he says that needs to be taken out, we'll take that out. If he says that we need to change some of the wording, we can change the wording, but this is something that Katie's put a lot of time and effort into, and basically when you start from nothing on something, there will be times that it will probably be improved, and we may find out in a year that we definitely need to change this, but that next year when this board meets, or if we need to do it sooner, we'll get that cleaned up. But I think she's done a real good job of starting from nothing to come up with this plan, and I think that after Evan reviews it and the board discusses it, I think we'll have something that we can, that is more enforceable, that's more of a standard across the board and everything like that.
Well, my concern, because I'm a broken record, is consistency. You know, when I read it, the thing that struck me is we have to be sure we have consistency with process, or we get squirreliness with people claiming they were treated disparately, and from there comes lawsuits. So really the whole focus is to make sure that we have defensible documents, because the people who are going to be coming in aren't going to know the breadth of cases you guys have worked. So it's just making sure that there's enough transparency and consistency so that we don't have to defend lawsuits. It's just a waste of our city's precious resources. Katie, you did an excellent job.
This is, I mean, basically it's just saying that this is a plan, that's a guide. It's not set in stone. That it's a guide for us to follow. It's some sort of, because before it just said 50 to 5,000. There you go. How do we say, okay, this is a $5,000 offense and this is a $50 offense? This just gives us some outline and some procedures and something to follow.
Gives you leeway.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. We're ready for a motion to recommend the board and mayor and alderman to adopt a stormwater enforcement response plan.
I make a motion.
Got a motion? Need a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I was wondering what the motion was.
To recommend
Send a
to the board and
favorable,
mayor and alderman
send
to
a
adopt a
favorable.
stormwater enforcement response plan. Oh, okay, there it is. It's up there.
He was still processing.
We have a
Absolutely.
motion and a second. Are there any questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered. Next item is discussion of stormwater program.
Okay. As you've probably already figured out by some of the changes that we've been making in our ordinance, we have a new permit. This
We have
permit-
what? Oh,
That we have a new permit.
yeah.
The old permit expired in 2008. They just got the permit issued and the effective date was October 1st of last year. Our NOI, notice of intent to seek coverage under this permit, was submitted in December, and we were granted coverage on March 9th. So there is our notice of coverage, that we have coverage under this permit. Some of the things that we've been doing in the stormwater department is we partnered with the Parks and Rec as normal, and they also partnered with the Nashville Clean Water Project, which is a great organization that focuses on Percy Priest Lake. Their cleanups had been rained out, so they worked with us, and we got a lot more people this year because of it. And just in case anyone's interested, they are having another cleanup on September 24th of this coming year, and I think their focus is all of Percy Priest Lake. They're going to shuttle people to different parts of the lake.
Will you be sending out one of those emails that goes to everybody and advertising it on Channel 3 to try to get the most exposure?
I can, but with this not being a city-sponsored cleanup, this is it's a private organization, but cleanups are always good. So I just wanted to mention that they are having another cleanup. As we normally do, we picked up litter along Hurricane Creek, and we had about 100 participants, which was up from about 40 the year before. Now, it was raining a lot in 2009, so that probably definitely had something to do with it. Here's just a few pictures. We had some staff come out with us. We had Fred. Mayor Mosley was there, although I believe she was Alderman Mosley at the time. Had some great participants. Kathy Tyson. Project Wet. This is something that we've recently started. It meets our public education and outreach requirement. We partner with Rutherford County, Town of Smyrna, City of Murfreesboro, to all come together, and then basically together we pay the Discovery Center in Murfreesboro to do education in our schools. We were very fortunate this year that Bonnie from the Discovery Center made 5 separate classroom visits to Rock Springs Elementary. And so there was a lot of education going on there. And I also have just some other numbers from that program, and these are county-wide numbers because it's really hard to separate it down since we're all coming together. 38,000 students were taught with Project WET within the county this year. Let's see. There were 7 classroom visits. 5 of those were here in Laverne. The other 2 were in Murfreesboro. There were 14 teachers certified in Project WET throughout the county this year. So this is a great program. It's a lot of education. During our classroom visits, they're given one homework assignment, and that is to go home and tell their parents everything that they learned in class today. So hopefully by teaching the younger generation, they're going home and telling their parents, and then maybe when their parents go to dump something out in the drainage ditch, that maybe they'll tell their parents to think twice about it. So it's definitely a really good program. Bonnie also helped us out with a summer camp with the Parks and Rec Department. We had a creek day this year where we actually, she brought waterproof boots for all 47 kids in the summer camp. And we were between the library and the CID building. We went into the creek. We were looking to see if we could find any critters or anything. We also did just educational activities. In the bottom picture, they're learning a little bit more about the water cycle. That's more than just the normal circle that they always teach, and go all the different little steps that the water molecule actually does go through. With the globe, they were trying to assess how much of the water or Earth's surface is actually covered with water, and just kind of a fun, let's toss a globe around little experiment. And then the top 2 pictures are us actually in the creek. So it was a lot of fun to have that day. Something else we will be starting. In about 2 weeks, we should be delivered our first street sweeper for the city of Laverne. Currently, it is a service that is contracted out with Sweeping Corp of America, and they sweep our streets about 6 times a year. With having our own sweeper, that should be able to be increased to at least 8 and hopefully more. So some of the pluses to this are that we will be able to sweep everything, and anytime that a subdivision is accepted, it can easily be added to our sweeping route, and we don't have to go through the hassles of contracts or any of that other information, or problems and hassles. So it'll be really nice. I called the dealer today, and it should be here week after next.
And let's also make mention of this. This is a mandatory part of our permit. So you can either have it done, or you can own your own piece of equipment to do it. So this is not a nicety. This is part of the actual the permit.
Yes,
It's mandatory.
and to add to what the mayor's saying, we did look through the budget this year, and with what the miles that we were sweeping, and the amount of that contract, and the amount of miles that we were going to have to go to sweeping because of how many streets that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen had accepted because of the bonds and different things like that. You know, we about tripled, I think, the numbers almost. I think it was.
Yeah, it's about tripling.
And by the time you look at the contract amount of what we was going to have to pay compared to what it would if we owned our own and stuff, you're looking about equal almost. And not only that, like Katie stated, if you're looking at 6 times a year, and then we can do it at least 8, and then there's, when we do the Old Timers Festival, just other numerous things and events and things like that, we'll have a sweeper that we can just easily get out there to sweep, as opposed to having to make that call and get the contractor to, the contract to come out to do it. And then at that point, they're going to say, well, we need extra money for that extra event, we need extra money for this. It's just more of, we can do that, we can do it on our own. The other thing, if you'll notice on this street sweeper, you can see on the side there is something that actually can clean out some drains and things like that if it gets clogged with leaves and stuff like that, you'll see that attachment on the side will allow that. So
Also
that's
point out some other features that This is the model that we are getting. It is the Schwartz A4000. We will be having a stainless steel bed, which should protect against rust to make the machine, give the machine a longer lifetime. It also does not require a special CDL driver's license. So basically, if you feel comfortable driving that vehicle, anybody can drive that vehicle. And we will be hiring a position for a driver, and we should be interviewing shortly and hopefully have them in place when we actually get the sweeper.
So the focus, is, the reason it's part of this MS4 is because it's going to keep stuff out of the storm drains.
A lot of people think that sweeping is for aesthetics, but what it really does, it keeps it out of the storm drains and then in turn keeps it out of the creek. So that keeps a lot of that pollution out and keeps things a little healthier and cleaner.
So you really think you'll do every street in Laverne?
We mainly sweep curb and gutter because if it's a ditch line, the grass itself filters.
Oh, yeah.
So we will be sweeping any accepted subdivision with curb and gutter.
Yes, it's going to be accepted because we don't want to get in areas where it's unaccepted and tear something up and have an issue with a developer who broke what. We don't need to do that. And the other thing that to point out too is on the sweeping is it keeps your drainage system clean too. It doesn't fill up with debris. I mean, whatever washes down into the drain eventually is in the pipe, and the next thing you know, that's halfway full, and then we have to send, and it takes us a lot more time to get that cleaned out, as opposed to if you could keep it clean from the very beginning.
Very cool.
And some of the projects that we've worked on, although this is not anywhere near all of them, we did a project on Little John Cove. This project, basically they were having problems where the water was jumping out of the ditch and coming back towards their house. So we just went in, dug the ditch a little deeper, added a little bit of a berm, so they now no longer have that problem. They were quite happy with that. This was a similar situation on Hollandale Road. This was around, if you know where the sewer pump station is on Hollandale Road, it's in that area.
At the end of our one.
And same problem, although this was a larger project because once we cleaned out one ditch, we had to clean out further down. There were some erosion places, so there was a lot of rock added. But hopefully, Miss Losley will no longer be having water in her garage.
That would be nice.
Big Hurricane Drive. This was, as you can tell with the picture, how high the dirt was actually around that head wall. It just needed cleaned out, so that's just what we did. We went in, cleaned out the ditch line, so that now water can flow freely. On Brushy Ridge on the other side of town, this was a similar problem, and also towards the back, you'll notice the rock. This backed up, this ditch line actually just flows into woods, and it was slowly just eroding away further in. So we added that blanket of rock just to act as an energy dissipator to hopefully stop that erosion, and also just cleaned out in front of the pipe, so now it will flow freely.
Is this a before and after, or is
No.
it two views?
It's two views.
Oh, sure, okay, yeah, we're behind it, I got it,
Yeah.
sorry, slow.
And on Crestview, this was basically just a roadside ditch that had filled in slowly with time, and so it was cleaned out. And that's all I have, so is there any other discussion or questions from the board members?
While we're, and this may be the time since we are discussing the stormwater program, with you being over stormwater, if you feel that this board might need to move to quarterly or whatever to get it on, especially since we're starting to do some changes now, I would say certainly feel free to do so. Just let everyone know what your decisions are in your engineering and all. Let us know what you feel more comfortable with. Don't ever hesitate to say we may need to move it to 2 to 3 to 4 times a year to keep us up, so you're not having to spend so much time at one time trying to get everybody acclimated to the new rules and regulations. I'm just saying that's something if y'all want to think about.
What we'll probably do is next year, since we've already got, or Bruce has got the calendar made for this whole year, and you know how the board meetings are so tightly
Right.
scheduled together since we have so many, or not just us, but everyone has so many.
Right.
What we'll probably do is discuss, me and Katie can discuss that further, and we may try to do 2 next year. And then if that seems like we need to do more, then we can bump it up to 3 or maybe 4.
Right.
Try to do that first, because as kind of we stated before, this is an appeals board, so we could potentially meet once a month. And then if you're already meeting
That's right.
2 or 3 times a year, we
Yeah.
may end up, you may be meeting all the time in the future, especially if fines start going out, as opposed to, you know, if people don't start, if people start to where they don't listen and don't take care of the problems, and fines go out, you may have a meeting every other, you know, month. So it could become to a lot of meetings, but we'll look
We
at
met
least doing 2
A lot
maybe.
more often, not last year, the year before.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
we
there was
had
a lot
some
going
meetings.
Yeah. we
Yes,
did.
and that, most of those had to do with the stream buffer, if
Right.
you'll remember, they wanted to appeal, you know, the width of that, so.
And I will say now that stream buffer is in the general permit, and I'm not sure if the state would be so lenient in giving variances, so that might not be something that comes up much in the future.
Did that change because of the flood last year?
No, that's just they want that extra buffer area to protect the streams itself, to keep all the wildlife and all the little things living in that stream healthy.
We knew they was gonna go to that dimension, so that's kind of what we went ahead and followed ours after. And that first few years, you know, we were more restricted than the state, so then that's why they decided, or that's why a few people come in and said, you know, the state's requirement is this, can we please get a variance? And that's where you had that. And now, okay, saying since we match, it's probably not gonna be a variance type issue anymore, because the state will not, I don't think they have a variance procedure.
Is there any more discussion on the stormwater program? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Seconded.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for answering all my questions.
Appreciate it.